Transnet has also featured here at the AgriSA conference. This is where we saw them forming part of that panel discussion. You can imagine that this is a strategic entity to the sector, and we know very well that whatever they're working on and whatever they're doing tends to affect the economy. It tends to also affect the agricultural sector, as theirs just cuts across a whole lot of industries here at home. I'm going to bring into the conversation now the Transnet CEO, Ms. Portia Derby, who'll just be joining us to let us in on their role here. We saw you taken to the podium as Transnet. We saw you forming part of discussions here. How important is it that you feature here as an entity?
I think thank you very much for the interview. I think it's really very important. Two reasons. One, agriculture is one of the biggest employers in South Africa. So you know, three problems: unemployment, inequality, and low growth. And so anything that we as Transnet can do to help deal with those three problems, we are going to be there front and center. Secondly, the agricultural sector is a big exporter, and I think, as you would have heard from Mrs. Slob, is a big exporter, and that's how it's grown over the last decade or so. Needs to comply with the low carbon emissions, and so rail increasingly becomes important for the sector. So we need to figure out with the sector how we can make rail accessible to them despite its very high costs.
What have been the challenges, especially pertaining to the issue of imports and exports? We know very well that you are very active at the harbours, and you're very critical in terms of pushing the economy where that is concerned. Over the years, have you been faring well where that is concerned? What have been the challenges, maybe that people that are part of the agriculture sector could contend with, to say that as Transnet, you are also facing or experiencing challenges that tends to hamper the work that they do?
Well, I think in the last couple of years we've been doing much better actually as Transnet Port Terminals. I mean, if you look at this year's season, citrus season, it went off like a bomb. It was efficient. We had hardly any complaints. And what we've done is that we tie up the planning a lot closer with the industry. For example, unfortunately now the deciduous and berry season was starting week 41 in the Western Cape in Cape Town, and we had planned and were ready to make sure that we met all of the deliveries, and we had actually no omissions by vessels. Unfortunately, the strike puts us on a bad footing, but we've also started planning around how we would ensure recovery. So we've done much better, because all we've done is that we've tightened the relationship between ourselves and the industry to ensure better planning.
And in terms of those that maybe are looking forward to ensuring that this sector is critical and optimum, we know very well that Transnet has not done well. There have been issues of corruption over the years that also played a part in taking you back as an entity. How are you doing? How are you faring where that is concerned? Is it stabilizing the Transnet entity? Is it something that maybe we can have hope as the public and also as the agricultural sector to say there's a move where that is concerned in this work that is done to stabilize the entity so that it's not compromised by anything, come a labor action or anything, corruption alike, that would tend to hamper the work that you do?
No, I think as a company we've definitely stabilized. I mean, we've got a fantastic team of people who love the work that they do, first of all. Secondly, the big issues that we were dealing with, which were three on rail, right? It was sorting out funding for infra. We're talking to government, because other governments fund infrastructure maintenance directly, because that would then help reduce the cost of moving on rail, because it just is naturally expensive. Secondly, we've indicated that we finally reached a deal with all of the local suppliers who were in the 1064. So that means that our newest fleet of locos will then be serviced and maintained, because we've not been able to secure parts and the rest. So that's number two. The third one, which we need definitely a lot more for collaboration, we work closely with government, but we also need society on the whole to help us, is this thing of cable theft, which directly impacts on the reliability of rail as a system. So in as far as Transnet, I think it's important that you have hope. We think that next 12 to 18 months are still going to be rough financially, because we are turning around the company. We have to reduce the cost of borrowing, for example, on our system. So we're cutting back on how much we borrow, and we're looking to drive revenue directly from the operations. And then hopefully we're able to have government come in to support some of the infra investment. And that's why the partnerships are important, because we see many opportunities for investment and growth. And we've tried to parcel it in such a way that in the areas where naturally competition makes sense, we've tried to bring in partners into the system.
Ms. Portia Derby, thank you very much for your time. She is, of course, the CEO of Transnet, coming through there to just help us make sense of the work that they are doing, saying that they are stabilizing as an entity. There are issues that are at play. For instance, right now, the hot topic being that industrial action by workers, Untu and Satawu members, and they're hoping as well that as an entity, they'll be able to bridge that impasse, and hopefully this will stabilize the entity, and this will be also beneficial for the economy. Katlego, Legodi, SABC News, Pretoria.